In the dead of night, the supply room's silence was broken by a single touch. Petty Officer James Harper's hand brushed Lieutenant Ryan Carter's, sparking a forbidden connection that could shatter their Navy careers. Heart-pounding, James met Ryan's steady gaze, both aware of the unspoken rules they were tempted to break. One moment, one choice. Hide their truth or risk everything for a spark neither could ignore. James, 27, had been stationed at Naval Base San Diego for just over a year. The Navy's rigid structure was both a shield and a cage, demanding discipline while stifling parts of himself he'd long buried. He'd learned early to keep his identity as a gay man locked away, especially here, where rumors could end careers. That night, he was alone, cataloging equipment for a drill, the monotony giving him space to think, until Ryan walked in. Lieutenant Ryan Carter, 32, carried an air of authority that silenced rooms. Known for his sharp focus and unyielding dedication, he was the kind of officer who didn't waste words. James had noticed him before, his presence impossible to ignore during briefings, but they'd never spoken beyond clipped exchanges. Now, Ryan stood in the doorway, clipboard in hand, checking the same inventory. "Harper, status." Ryan's voice was low, professional, but it carried an edge that made James straighten instinctively. "Almost done, sir," James replied, keeping his tone steady. He handed over a stack of forms, their fingers brushing as Ryan took them. The contact was brief, accidental, but it sent a jolt through James, like a circuit suddenly live. Ryan's hand lingered a fraction too long, and when their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them, a question neither dared voice. Ryan cleared his throat, stepping back. "Good. Finish up and report tomorrow." He turned to leave, but hesitated, glancing back. "You're thorough, Harper. That's rare." The compliment caught James off guard. "Thank you, sir," he managed, his pulse racing. Ryan nodded and left, his boots echoing down the hall. James stood frozen, the moment replaying in his mind. Had he imagined the weight in Ryan's glance? The Navy's code was clear. Personal feelings had no place here, especially not ones that could be labeled inappropriate. Over the next week, James couldn't shake the encounter. He spotted Ryan during drills, his command sharp, his presence commanding attention. Each time their paths crossed, James felt it, a pull, a tension, like a taut wire ready to snap. He told himself it was nothing, that he was reading too much into a fleeting moment. But then, late one evening, it happened again. James was in the motor pool, double-checking vehicle logs, when Ryan appeared, his shadow falling across the clipboard. "Working late, Harper?" Ryan's tone was casual, but his gaze was sharp, searching. "Yes, sir," James said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Just making sure everything's ready for the inspection." Ryan nodded, stepping closer to inspect the log. Their shoulders brushed, and James's breath caught. It was nothing, just proximity, but the air felt charged. Ryan didn't move away. Instead, he spoke, his voice quieter now. "You ever feel like you're carrying something you can't put down?" James froze, the question cutting deeper than it should. He knew what Ryan meant, not just the weight of duty, but something personal, hidden. "Yeah," he admitted, barely above a whisper. "All the time." Ryan's eyes met his, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just them. No ranks, no rules, just two people teetering on the edge of something dangerous. Then, footsteps echoed outside, and Ryan stepped back, his expression hardening. "Keep up the good work," he said, and was gone. James's heart pounded as he finished his work, the encounter leaving him unsteady. He'd grown up in a small town, where his family's disapproval had forced him to hide who he was. Coming out to his parents at 18 had cost him their support. His brother's last letter called his choices a mistake. The Navy had been his escape, but it came with its own rules. Rules that made moments like these feel like a betrayal of everything he'd worked for. Yet, as days passed, James found himself seeking Ryan out. A glance during a briefing, a nod in the mess hall. Each interaction felt like a step closer to a line they couldn't cross. Then, during a late-night inventory in the supply room, Ryan appeared again. This time there was no pretense of work. He closed the door behind him, the click loud in the silence. "Harper," Ryan began, his voice low. "We need to talk." James's stomach twisted. "Sir?" Ryan stepped closer, his expression conflicted. "What happened the other night? It wasn't nothing. But you know what this means. The risks." James nodded, his throat tight. He knew the stakes. Discharge, disgrace, the end of everything they'd built. But standing there, inches from Ryan, he felt something stronger than fear. "I know," he said, "but I don't want to keep pretending." Ryan's jaw tightened, and for a moment James thought he'd walk away. Instead, Ryan reached out, his hand brushing James's arm, deliberate this time. "Neither do I," he said, his voice barely audible, "but we have to be careful." The air between them crackled, the weight of their admission settling in. They were crossing a line, one that could cost them everything. But in that moment, James didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a sailor, but as himself. As Ryan left, promising to find a way to talk again, James knew this was only the beginning. The Navy's rules loomed large, and whispers of suspicion could already be forming. But the spark between them was undeniable, and James wasn't sure he could, or wanted to, put it out. The supply room door clicked shut, but the echo of Ryan's words lingered in James's mind. "We have to be careful." The warning was clear, yet the pull between them grew stronger, like a tide James couldn't resist. Over the next few weeks, their secret took root, blooming in stolen moments that carried both thrill and dread. James, now hyper-aware of Ryan's presence, found excuses to cross paths. A late-night equipment check, a quick handoff of reports. Each encounter was a chance to exchange quiet words. In a secluded corner of the motor pool, Ryan leaned close, his voice low. "You ever wonder what it'd be like to not hide?" he asked, his question heavy with unspoken longing. James nodded, his chest tight. "Every day, but growing up, I learned hiding was safer." He shared a piece of his past, his small-town upbringing, where his parents' rejection after coming out at 18 left scars. Ryan listened, his gaze steady, then offered his own truth. "I had someone once back in Norfolk. He outed me to save himself, cost me a promotion, nearly my career." The confession deepened their bond, but it also sharpened the stakes. The Navy's culture, though slowly changing, still carried whispers of judgment. James felt it in the mess hall, where Ensign Tom Bradley's sharp glances followed him. Tom, a brash officer with a knack for stirring tension, seemed to sense something. During a briefing, he leaned toward James, his tone mocking. "You and Carter seem close lately, Harper. Something we should know?" James's stomach churned, but he kept his face neutral. "Just doing my job, Bradley." Tom smirked, unconvinced, and the exchange left James rattled. That night he met Ryan behind the storage sheds, the darkness shielding them. "Tom's watching us," James warned, his voice tight. "He's trouble." Ryan's jaw clenched. "Let him talk. We're not doing anything wrong." But his words didn't ease the knot in James's chest. The risk of exposure was real, and the memory of his family's rejection fueled his fear. His brother's last letter, calling his life a mistake, echoed in his mind, a reminder of what he stood to lose again. Their meetings grew more cautious, confined to late hours when the base was quiet. One night, in a deserted training yard, Ryan's hand grazed James's, a deliberate touch that sent warmth through him. "This is worth it," Ryan said, his voice firm. "You're worth it." James wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at him. Could they keep this hidden forever? The tension escalated when Tom cornered James in the locker room, his tone laced with suspicion. "Carter's got you working late a lot, huh? Better watch yourself, Harper. People talk." The veiled threat hit hard, and James's pulse raced. He didn't respond, but Tom's words lingered, a warning of the storm brewing. By the end of the week, James felt the weight of their secret pressing down. He met Ryan in the supply room again, the air thick with unspoken fears. "What if Tom says something?" James asked, his voice low. "What if this gets out?" Ryan stepped closer, his hand resting on James's shoulder. "We'll handle it. Together." His certainty was a lifeline, but James couldn't shake the feeling that their secret was a fragile thing, ready to shatter with one wrong move. As Ryan left, James stood alone, the silence heavy with the choices they faced. Their connection was undeniable, but the cost of it loomed larger than ever. The weight of their secret pressed harder on James as days passed, each glance from Ryan a mix of comfort and risk. The naval base San Diego hummed with routine, but beneath it, tension simmered. Ensign Tom Bradley's suspicions had grown into a quiet vendetta, his sharp comments in the mess hall drawing curious eyes. James felt the scrutiny, a constant reminder of the line they were treading. Late one evening, James was finishing a report in the admin office when Tom appeared, leaning against the doorway. "You and Carter are tight, Harper," he said, his voice low, edged with malice. "People are starting to notice." James's grip tightened on his pen, but he kept his tone even. "We're just doing our jobs, Bradley. You should try it sometime." Tom's smirk widened. "Keep telling yourself that." He left, but his words lingered, a threat James couldn't ignore. That night he met Ryan in a secluded corner of the training yard, the darkness their only shield. "Tom's not letting this go," James said, his voice tense. "He's fishing for something." Ryan's expression hardened. "He's got nothing concrete. Stay calm, James. We stick to protocol, and he's just noise." But James wasn't so sure. The memory of his family's rejection, his brother's letter calling him a disgrace, fueled his fear of exposure. Losing the Navy, his only home now, would break him. The storm broke 2 days later. James was called to the commanding officer's office, his stomach churning as he saw Ryan already there, standing stiffly. Captain Elena Torres sat behind her desk, her expression unreadable. "Petty Officer Harper, Lieutenant Carter, we have a problem," she began. "Ensign Bradley filed a report alleging inappropriate conduct between you two. Care to explain?" James's heart sank. Tom had done it, turned his suspicions into a formal accusation. The words inappropriate conduct echoed, a coded phrase that could end their careers. Ryan spoke first, his voice steady. "Ma'am, there's no misconduct. Bradley's making assumptions based on nothing." Torres raised an eyebrow. "Then why is he so convinced? He claims you've been meeting after hours, acting too close." James's mind raced, replaying every stolen moment. He wanted to speak, but fear choked him. Ryan, sensing his hesitation, stepped in. "Ma'am, I'll be straight with you. Harper and I have a personal relationship. It's private, and it hasn't affected our duties." Bradley's report is personal bias, nothing more. The admission hung in the air, raw and dangerous. James's pulse pounded. He hadn't expected Ryan to be so bold. Torres leaned back, her gaze shifting between them. "You know the Navy's stance on this. Even if it's personal, it's a liability. Bradley's pushing for an investigation." James found his voice. "Ma'am, Bradley's been harassing me for weeks, making comments, trying to stir trouble. He's not reporting out of concern. He's targeting us." His words came out sharper than intended, fueled by anger at Tom's betrayal. Torres nodded slowly. "I'll look into Bradley's conduct, but you two need to understand the scrutiny you're under now. This isn't just about you. It's about the chain of command, the unit's cohesion." She dismissed them, her warning clear. One misstep, and they'd face consequences. Outside, James turned to Ryan, his voice low. "You didn't have to say that. You put yourself on the line." Ryan's hand grazed his arm, a fleeting touch. "I wasn't letting you face this alone." The gesture steadied James, but the weight of Tom's betrayal lingered. Back in the barracks, whispers followed, some curious, others hostile. A junior officer muttered something as James passed, too quiet to catch but sharp enough to sting. That night, alone in his bunk, James replayed the day. Tom's actions weren't just personal. They were a reminder of the world's judgment, the same judgment that had driven a wedge between him and his family. But Ryan's choice to stand by him sparked something new. Defiance. They weren't just hiding anymore. They were fighting for their truth. And James wasn't sure if he was ready for the battle ahead. The air in Captain Torres's office lingered in James's mind, thick with the weight of Ryan's admission. They'd crossed a line, not just with their secret, but by laying it bare. Naval Base San Diego buzzed with routine. But for James, every step felt like walking through a minefield. Tom's accusation had ignited whispers, and now their truth was a spark that could either burn them or light a new path. The next morning, Torres summoned them again. "I've reviewed Bradley's report," she said, her tone measured. "His claims are thin, driven by personal bias. He's been reprimanded for spreading rumors and faces a 2-week suspension." James exhaled, relief mixing with unease. Torres's gaze softened slightly. "But you two aren't in the clear. Your relationship, even if personal, draws attention. You'll face judgment. Be ready for it." Ryan nodded. "Understood, ma'am. We're committed to our duties." James echoed the sentiment, though his stomach twisted. Torres's warning was clear. Their choice to be open would come at a cost. As they left, Ryan's hand brushed James's wrist, a silent promise they'd face it together. The base's reaction was a mixed tide. Some peers, like Petty Officer Sarah Klein, offered quiet support. During a break in the mess hall, she leaned in. "I've got your back, Harper. My cousin's out, and I know what it's like to fight for who you are." Her words were a lifeline, but others weren't as kind. A group of officers fell silent when James approached, their glances cold. One muttered, "Carter's playing favorites," loud enough to sting. Off base, the blow came harder. A letter arrived from James's brother, Kevin, the first in years. "Heard about your situation," it read. "You're embarrassing us. Dad would have called it a disgrace. The words cut deep, reopening wounds from when his family had turned him away at 18. James crumpled the letter, his hands shaking. Ryan found him later, sitting alone in the training yard. "Your brother?" Ryan asked, sitting beside him. James nodded, throat tight. "He thinks I'm a mistake." Ryan's hand rested on his shoulder. "He's wrong. You're not alone in this." The touch grounded James, but the pain lingered. Ryan shared his own scar, a lover in Norfolk who'd betrayed him, outing him to save face. "I thought I'd never trust again," Ryan said. "Then I met you." Their resolve hardened. They stopped hiding, sharing small gestures, a glance during drills, a quick word in passing. But Tom's return from suspension brought new tension. He avoided James, but his glares carried venom. During a briefing, he interrupted Ryan's orders, questioning his authority with a pointed edge. "Some of us follow protocol, sir." The room tensed, and James's fists clenched, but Ryan stayed calm, redirecting the discussion. That night, in a quiet corner of the motor pool, James voiced his fear. "Tom's not done. He'll keep pushing." Ryan's gaze was steady. "Let him. We're not backing down." His words sparked defiance in James. They weren't just fighting for each other now. They were challenging a system that demanded they hide. A week later, Sarah approached James with news. "Some of the junior officers are talking. They respect you and Carter for standing up. You're not as alone as you think." Her words lifted James, a reminder that their fight wasn't just personal. They were carving space for others too. As they walked back to the barracks, Ryan's hand brushed his, no longer a secret, but a quiet act of courage. The reckoning wasn't over, but James felt a shift. They'd faced betrayal and judgment, yet their bond grew stronger. The Navy's rules still loomed, but for the first time, James believed they could rewrite their story, not as a secret, but as a truth worth fighting for. The Naval Base San Diego carried on, its rhythm unbroken, but for James and Ryan, the world had shifted. Their decision to live openly was a quiet revolution. Each step forward a defiance of the shadows they'd once hidden in. The whispers of judgment still lingered, but support from allies like Sarah Klein gave them strength. They were no longer just surviving. They were building something real. One evening, at a base gathering, James felt the weight of eyes on them. He and Ryan stood side by side, their hands brushing as they shared a laugh with Sarah and a few others. When Ryan's fingers intertwined with his, a simple act under the open sky, James's heart raced, not with fear, but with pride. A junior officer, Ensign Lopez, raised a glass. "To standing tall," she said, her smile genuine. The toast rippled through the group, a quiet nod to their courage. Not everyone joined in. Tom Bradley stood at a distance, his silence loud, but the moment felt like a victory. Life settled into a new rhythm. James and Ryan navigated their duties with precision, determined to prove their relationship didn't compromise their work. Off-duty, they carved out moments together. A walk along the pier, a shared coffee in the early hours. Each interaction was a reminder of what they'd fought for. But challenges persisted. A letter from James's brother arrived, colder than the last, urging him to reconsider his choices. James tore it up, but the words stung, echoing his family's rejection years ago. Ryan, sensing his struggle, shared more of his own past. "After Norfolk, I thought I'd never let anyone in again," he said one night, their hands linked under the stars. "But you changed that. We're stronger than their judgment." His words steadied James, fueling his resolve to keep moving forward. Months later, a new opportunity arose. Sarah introduced them to a support group for LGBTQ+ service members, a space where they could share their story. There, James met a young recruit who admitted, "Seeing you two gives me hope I can be myself one day." The words hit hard, a reminder that their openness was a beacon for others. Ryan squeezed James's hand, a silent acknowledgement of their shared purpose. As time passed, they began to dream bigger. One evening by the waterfront, Ryan broached a new idea. "What if we started a family?" he asked, his voice soft but certain. James paused, the question stirring a warmth he hadn't expected. He'd never imagined this future. Not after his family's rejection, but with Ryan it felt possible. "I'd like that," he said, his voice steady. "A life with you, with kids. It's worth fighting for." They researched adoption, navigating the complex process with determination. The road was long, paperwork, interviews, and the lingering bias of some agencies, but their bond held firm. When they got the call that they'd been matched with a child, a boy named Eli, joy overwhelmed them. They stood together holding each other, tears mixing with laughter. "We're doing this," Ryan whispered. "We're really doing it." The day they brought Eli home, the base felt different, brighter, fuller. Sarah and Lopez stopped by, offering gifts and support. Even Captain Torres sent a note, congratulating them. Tom, now quieter after his suspension, kept his distance. His influence diminished. The challenges weren't gone. Some peers still whispered, and James's family remained silent. But the love in their new family was louder. One night, as they sat with Eli asleep between them, James looked at Ryan. "We made it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Ryan nodded, his hand finding James's. "And we're just getting started." Their journey, born in secrecy and forged through betrayal, had led to this: a life unhidden, a love unbreakable. They'd faced judgment and won, not just for themselves, but for everyone who'd find courage in their story. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. More stories are coming that will move you, inspire you, and challenge the way you see your own journey. Every story matters, and each one brings us closer to who we are meant to become.